dude, I'm stoked about today's podcast episode. I think this will be a really fun topic. So today we kind of wanted to get into the topic of how to handle when significant others, family, friends, basically anybody in your life isn't on board or isn't necessarily supportive of changes that you might be trying to make in regards to your health, your fitness, trying to lose weight, or anything like that. And so I think it's it's like initially when we were texting back and forth on the topic, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be lit. We can talk about why I stayed single for like so many freaking years, right? This is gonna be good. So do you want to kick it off, Alex? What you got first?
Maybe start to ask about like, I don't know, like with, cause I mean, you were single for a long time and then you and Charlie started dating. Cause like, how long were you single for? You said 10 years?
Yeah. So it was literally, I think I had like 2 weeks left and it would have been 10 years, double digits.
Why do you think you were single so long?
So something that I personally experienced doing one-on-one nutrition coaching was the number of times I would have a conversation with a client and they would be trying to make a change, whether it would be, hey, I need to start going to the gym. I'm uncomfortable with my body. I want to lose weight. I want to change how I look. And it is so hard, right? Like, think about, even if we talk about alcohol, how hard it can be when, you have a friend group that they party and they love drinking. And then maybe you have to be up early the next morning and you got shit to do or whatever it is. And, it's like the peer pressure that can happen when you suddenly aren't showing up the way that you've historically always showed up, whether that's alcohol, whether it's, food, fitness, and stuff like that. And so there's so much to unpack there of like, it's like if you have people in your corner that are supportive and they're about it and, they're your cheerleaders and your support squad versus if it's like imagine trying to lose weight, but your house is full of ice cream and pizza and beer and all the foods that you love. It's just two totally different scenarios of like, well, one, it's going to be difficult no matter what, right? But one is a very much smoother outcome versus it's like, that's hard, right? Like that's fucking hard. So with clients and stuff like that, the number of times that, it's like, I think especially with something like my parents' generation or your parents' generation, it's like a lot of people got married at a very young age, started having kids, real quick. And how many people, it's like over time, you just change, right? Like as people, we're always changing, we're always evolving, our interests, our priorities change. And so what happens, because I've been in that relationship before, like that summarized me in college, was it's like, I found CrossFit and I, started eating healthier and I started changing all of these things. And I was like obsessed with the gym. Like I couldn't get enough of lifting and CrossFit and competing in CrossFit and, doing all the things. And then reversely, I had this significant other that I'd been with for years and years, and they didn't have that same passion. It's like they actually tried to go to the gym and, do the thing. And it just like, they didn't have that excitement and they didn't, for them, it was like working out was a chore and the whole eating healthy, it's like, there's a lot to unpack there, right? But it's like, that was the deal breaker for me was it was just like we had grown apart and here I was, meal prepping, going to CrossFit every day, doing the most. And then to come home and it, like I said, there would be that, that person was always going out drinking every night with his friends and there was always pizza in the house and just all these foods. And it was like, well, like I gotta go, right? Like this isn't the life that I want to keep living. And so on the client end, it's a little different when you're dating, right? But shit's complicated and you can't just like leave
Especially if you're like married and kids and stuff like that. Yeah.
But like also, like I said, like the fuck you gonna do when you're in that situation of like, dang, like I want to make changes. I'm uncomfortable with my body. And here I'm kind of trapped in this situation, right? So I think from repeatedly seeing what it can be like, and like I said, personally experienced what it's like to date somebody that no longer has the same priorities as me. But B, seeing it repeatedly in clients where it'd be like, yo, that's rough, right? So that's just kind of, like I said, my personal experience. But when I was interested and trying to date and trying to find somebody that I wanted to be in a relationship with, it's just really hard to navigate. And I think the thing is too, it's like it's really hard when you meet people that they're like, oh yeah, I don't even lift, and you'd be like, oh well, this probably ain't gonna work. Shit, right? But same thing, it's like on the eating front, it's like I never expected anybody to be like, hey, I am also gluten-free, dairy-free, meal prepping. But at the same time, it's like being in a relationship with somebody that we both track our macros, we eat the same stuff, we both follow the same training program. Again, it's just so freaking easy because even if we do have, really stressful day, really busy, whatever, it's like, hey, it's 8 p.m. Haven't gone to the gym yet. You want to go? And it's like Charlie's always that ride or die, and vice versa, right? Because same thing, it's like he's so busy with his firefighting stuff and classes and all that stuff. And so it's just two totally different scenarios. And how do you make the best choice the easiest choice, right? Like that is, I will always come back to that. It's like the people that are the most successful and have the easiest time getting from A to B are really good at creating that situation. And it starts with the people that you surround, in your close proximity.
Yeah. And I mean, you can be selective with that, especially, if you're dating. Dating is hard. Like dating is one of the hardest things ever. I feel like in modern society, somebody likes me and, I kind of like them, but they have these deal breakers, or they have these like not deal breakers, but they have these things that maybe don't align. But maybe I'm just like, because they like me and dating is so hard that they're willing to like settle. And
Yes.
I think that's really like something that gets people into relationships that, yeah, I mean, things are just not compatible in some ways, especially with like, health and fitness. Like you start dating somebody and, if all they want to do is go out and get drinks or go to brunch or go to the bars and you're trying to like, go to the gym, like, and you want to hang out with your partner, but like, you're hungover the next day, like that's going to be really hard. And or if you have other goals and then they're just like not really on board with it, it's really hard. And I think like getting to that point where you are really clear about like what you want and what's important to you is super important. So you can be a bit selective. Like, I mean, I know for me, when I moved to Austin, I had just like left a relationship and I got on Bumble and I put on my Bumble profile like, hey, like you don't have to be like super like fitness model, because I had all these like pictures of me like working out, and that's what I was into, because I wanted people to know, like I wanted women to know like, yo, this is what I'm about. And I was like, look, you don't have to eat like healthy all the time, but you can't sit there and like live on Oreos and wine and sit on the couch and watch, The Bachelorette all week. Cause I'm just not about that. I was trying to be really, really upfront with like what my values and what was important for me. And I think that that's something really important if we're like getting out there and trying to date, like what's really super important to you.
Did you find it difficult? I know in the podcast, we haven't talked about this yet, but for those that don't know, Alex doesn't drink, hasn't done it in years and years. Was it difficult being on dating apps and going on dates? Because I feel like that's so like socially normal to be like, hey, do you want to grab dinner and drinks? Or like, how did you navigate that in terms of, I assume I've never been on dating apps. So I assume like, you probably put on your profile or.
Whenever I went on dates, I always went on like active dates. First dates is usually, hey, like let's go for a walk, let's go for a hike. Or let's do something, let's go to the gym or something like that. Or I would suggest something active. And we really wouldn't go out to do like dinner or stuff like that, like until later. But yeah, I mean, just being upfront, like, hey, like I don't really drink, so it's like, if that's cool. But if someone's like all about that, then again, it just wouldn't be compatible. And you can kind of tell, like, you go online and you see people like with their pictures, if they're out and like all their pictures like are out of the bar or the brunch or whatever like that. And I'm like, okay, well, I know that it's not going to work, right? Because like that's what you're about. That's your social scene, you know. So, but yeah, I mean, again, I think just being like super upfront and being, you know, communicative about like what's actually important and value wise, and like when you're dating, I think that that's really a big important thing.
I think for sure, like the two biggies we'll probably end up covering today is just like communication, boundaries, and then kind of like you said, just like knowing exactly what you want. And again, you know, it's like sometimes that shit changes, and
Right.
that's like why things get hard. Is you're saying like, oh, hey, you know, my values and my priorities have changed. But I think if we kind of get into it's like, let's say that you're suddenly like, hey, you know, I am uncomfortable with my body. I do want to lose weight, and I, you know, I want to be on that adventure that is, you know, dieting and stuff like that. I think the biggest tip or the biggest advice I can just give is knowing that it's like, yo, you're an adult and like you got to do you and you have to own your behavior. I think we hear so often, you know, where it's like, oh, well, my husband just sabotaged me because, you know, again, he brought home pizza, or, you
Mm-hmm.
know, we went out and he wants to drink. And it's like, at the end of the day, dude, it's like you have to be an adult and you have to be in charge of what's going in your mouth. Like, it ain't nobody putting it in there for you, right?
Right.
And so you have to own your behavior and not get caught in that victim mentality, because ultimately, you know, it's like if we don't communicate how we want our house to be all of a sudden, and the foods we want in our house, or what we want to do when we go out to dinner, well, it's like you also can't be mad that that person's not a mind reader, right?
I think that's really super important, like communicating, hey, like this is why these are my goals and these are why these are important to me. And, you know, also communicating that, hey, like I would love your support with this, right? And what that support specifically looks like, got to be super specific. Like, you can't just say, hey, I love for you to support me. You got to tell people. I think you told me this once. It's kind of stuck with me. It's like we have to tell people how to love us, or how to support us, right? Like if you sit there and say like, hey, like I need you to not do X, right? For me to be successful. And hopefully they, you know, they are on board with that and they were like, yeah, whatever. I want to do that. Cause again, it's like they can't read your mind, and you got to be really, really specific about what you need.
I think that most people, if you communicate and you're like, hey, you know, husband, wife, whatever it is, I'm uncomfortable with my body. So the next few months, I'm going to be working to, you know, work towards that change and stuff like that. You know, do you think that the next few months we could try to keep junk food out of the house, or we could try to kind of keep our house more full of, you know, lots of meat, lots of fruits and vegetables, and that sort of thing? You know, it's like the biggest thing is it's like people want to support you. And especially if you're dating somebody, you're in a relationship with somebody, it's like, I don't think anybody out there is like, yo, fuck you, right? It's
Well,
like,
if it's a healthy relationship, there's definitely relationships that aren't. You know, honestly though, if that comes out, that's kind of a red flag, right? Like if somebody is completely like, well, fuck you, I'm not gonna help you, I'm not gonna support you. Like, uh, that's a little bit. That's the trick. That's a red flag.
totally. And it's like, you know, I think that there's gonna end up being, you know, if you can be very specific about, hey, I think X, Y, and Z would be really helpful, well, then that person also has room to like work with you and find a happy medium where it's like, hey, dude, like, I'm not on this adventure with you, but I do want to support you. So, like, what if, you know, we can still keep these things in the house, but let's agree to keep, you know, XYZ in the house? You know, it's like
Mm-hmm.
there's just so much room for like, how do you collaborate and meet in the middle? But it comes back to like, you got to get uncomfortable. You have to have those conversations.
One scenario that commonly happens is, all right, so you do have this partner that is not necessarily on board with changing their, you know, health and fitness, and I think that that's okay. But I think that one, the biggest thing is that if your partner is that way, then they can still support you, but not like have that kind of like judging, you know, every time you're saying like, hey, I want to go to the gym, or I want to like weigh this out, if I'm tracking my macros, they give you like this big eye roll. I think that's like, kind of a big red flag. But on the other hand, I think if you have a partner that's not really wanting to necessarily change, I think a big important thing is like, don't try to force them to change. If you try to force them to change, I think it's going to backfire and be met with a lot of resistance. It can be as like seen as nagging or criticism and stuff like that. So I think the biggest thing I hear from people is like, why won't my partner like get healthier? Because I'm getting healthier. And I think that like, if you are the one that's doing that work, then yeah, I mean, lead by example. And a lot of times I've worked with clients that, their partner wasn't on board at first, but then they saw them getting in shape and fit. And they were like, it gave them a lot more confidence to say like, oh, like I can actually do this. Cause maybe they just didn't think that they could change. And they actually start getting on board and whether they work with me or not, or work with their own coach, I've had so many clients like, oh yeah, my husband, he's like lost like 20 pounds because he's just doing what I'm doing too. And it's like, that can come along with it. So, I think don't try to force it, but lead by example.
Yeah, well, it's like you're exactly right. I feel like that's such a common question is it's like, hey, the person in my life that I care about does want to make change or they want to lose weight. They want to start being more active, more healthy, more whatever. How can I support them? And you nailed it. It's like I think that when we know somebody also sets a goal, it can be easy to start unintentionally judging them or making comments, right? Because it's like, let's pretend that person is like, hey, I want to start dieting. I'm going to start XYZ. And then you see them not, doing things that aren't necessarily in alignment. It would be easy to bring that up, to bring it to their attention. And it can like, what a toxic thing that can like permeate into your relationship is like, you're coming with the best intentions, but it ends up being received as being judged, being nagged at, being criticized. And it's like everybody moves along at different rates on their journey, for health and fitness, right? And so we can't assume that a person is ready, willing, and able to make changes exactly in the way or exactly the same speed that we might be willing to make changes. So it's like you nailed that 100%. Um, and it's just gotta come internally, like you said too. It's like you can't want it for them. You can invite them. Hey, I'm going to the gym at 3 p.m. That's what time I'm gonna be doing them. Keep inviting them. But then again, it's like you got to just send the invite and then like fucking cut it. We don't get to keep going. Because it is, people have to want to change, but they have to also be willing and ready and able to make a change. And that's two totally different camps. Like we think about doing something and then the next step becomes, okay, we start making those changes. So you just can't take it personally for sure.
Have you ever run into anybody that like a client or a friend, where they're worried or concerned that their partner was getting in shape and more attractive, and they were really worried about their partner like finding someone else? Has that ever come across your table?
I mean, I experienced it personally for sure. Because,
Oh
like I
wow.
said, it's well, imagine, right? It's like I feel like, especially in CrossFit gyms, it's very common for people more so than maybe at like a gold gym or something. It's like people tend to be pretty freaking, about it and, very into it. And so everybody's super shredded, six pack. And so, same thing. It's like, well, if you're suddenly aboard the train, you aspire for that too. So then you kind of go down the road to being that thing. So I definitely was in the receiving end of, especially as I started CrossFit coaching, I was at the gym all day long. I would be surrounded by, shirtless dudes working out. And so there was definitely that whole like the toxic jealousy, oh, like, are you cheating on me? You're at the gym all the time. So I would say on the client end for sure, because it's like when somebody is making changes, it can also indirectly make you feel bad, right? So it's like, let's say your best friend starts working out, they start getting healthier, they start seeing, body composition changes and stuff like that. How common is it for people in your life to start making negative remarks or, like I said, like criticizing and judging? And what it actually is from that whole like it's an internal thing for them, and you are indirectly making them feel bad about themselves. And so them, they start making comments and remarks because it's coming from a place of insecurity, because you're making them feel bad.
Yeah. No, I had actually I've had a client that experienced that. She was like, she went out with some she had like a girls' weekend, and her friends were giving her a lot of shit for like not drinking or not eating some of the same foods. And I was, and what they were saying, I was trying to explain to my client. I was like, that's coming from probably a place of insecurity, because they were overweight and she's made a lot of change, and they could see that. And then they probably got really reminded about like the things that are maybe they're not happy with. And I was like, you can't take that personally. Like, that is not something about you. It's just they're seeing it, and then they're choosing to now project it outside towards you. And I think something too that maybe just going back to that communication is just like, if you have friends or, partners or whatever, just like communicating that, like, hey, like, our relationship, just because I'm changing things about myself, nothing has to change about like our relationship. Like, I'm still going to be your friend. I'm still going to be your husband, wife, whatever. Like, we're still good. I just want to make these changes. I would love for you to come along with me and like do this stuff or support me. But like, nothing's going to change. And I think just maybe even communicating that they're safe, that will take a lot of that like judgmental criticism or just like backhand, offhand comments out of the picture. And they'll be more on board to just like really help you.
The biggest thing too is a lot of times people don't realize that they are making those remarks. Or, like I
Mhm.
said, it's just like the littlest things can just twist and, be really hurtful or be very, unsupportive. And so it's like, again, back to the boundaries thing. It's like, if your partner, or your family or whatever isn't showing up the way you want them to, you have to hold them accountable and you have to call that out. I know with my family personally, it was like Thanksgiving when I was, we'll say, 18, 19 years old, like, freshman in college. And so somebody in my family kind of made an offhand comment about like, oh, I don't know why you can't just like eat XYZ food and like just enjoy the family and be normal. And my Enneagram 8 katana energy. It
Katana.
was like, it did. I had to learn to advocate for myself of like,
Mhm.
I like pulled, my family member off to the side and just like straight up, like, this is how it is, right? Of like, hey, I want to start by saying that your comment was really not okay, like very inappropriate to say to somebody that you love and should be supportive of. But hey, here's what I'm personally experiencing and dealing with. These are the things I'm trying to navigate, and this is how I'm struggling. So here's ways of how you can support me. And it was just, very no bullshit. And like, this family member straight up just like froze deer in headlights. And then you could also see like, oh shit, like, okay, I was just making a comment, but I didn't expect for it to be a whole situation, right? But since then, we've never had to have those conversations again, because it was just like, woo, it was like afterwards, I was like sweating a little and whatever. But again, it's just like people aren't mind readers. And the people that love us are also typically the people that have like the most likelihood to hurt us, because they interact with us the most and they do care about us. And so it is, it's like it just also hurts a little more when it's from a loved one versus if it's, a stranger or somebody on Instagram, whatever. But truly, it's like people just don't know. And sometimes people, make comments that aren't appropriate to the people that they love.
Have you always been comfortable or felt confident with having those tough conversations with people? Because I know a lot of people, that's a big thing. Like, a lot of people are really, they don't have the confidence to have that like tough conversation or confront somebody about that. They'd rather just like, you know, kind of let it go. Have you always been that way, or did that take time for you to develop?
Yeah, I think it definitely it's like it took me a little bit longer to advocate for myself and to be comfortable doing it. I will say obviously the more you do it, the better you obviously get at it. I feel like especially with clients like with holidays and stuff like that, that's when you see a lot of the hey, it's like in my family, we eat at holidays. And so that would be a lot of coaching conversation would be like, hey, I hear you that you're from an Italian family and your Italian grandma, your mom actually just wants you to be happy. And I understand that they want you to eat the food and be joyous and all that stuff. And so I think it's just every situation is going to be a little bit different because it's going to depend on that relationship and that person and stuff like that. But it comes back to, it's like if I was going to break down that step by step, if we start by just getting vulnerable of, hey, here's where I'm at with my nutrition or my fitness. Here's why I'm trying to make these changes. Here's why it's important to me. And then getting into here are the ways that you can support me. But sometimes it just takes time. Exactly like you
Yeah.
said, it's like for my family, I was the weirdo in the family that'd be like, oh, Lori works out on holidays. And I would, be doing burpees in the living room, or I would go for a run, or I would be doing little body weight workouts and this and that at, holidays or just, family get togethers or this and that. And so for a while, I was the weirdo. I was kind of the butt of the jokes and I didn't care, right? Because it was like, I know how I want to feel. I feel better when I'm moving and active. And I don't feel great when I'm just sitting on a couch all day at a family member's house, right? Now, I couldn't ask for a better situation when it comes to my oldest brother and my sister in law and the kids, because it's like, well, my brother CrossFits, he runs. Now we do Murph together, every single year. Or I do think a big turning point was when my youngest niece got diagnosed with celiac. And what what an adventure that is, right? And so, that was really the big changing point was, oh shit, we're in over our head. We're trying to figure out this thing. We're still not being successful because she's still, test wise isn't getting better on her celiac numbers. And so that was kind of the big gateway of churning over the kitchen, having to go through, the cupboards, the pantries, the fridge, and stuff like that. For so many years, I felt like I was on this little lonely island. But then by leading from the front and just repeatedly showing up, and again, it's not like I was going to see my family and be like, oh, you guys should eat healthier. Oh, you should XYZ. It was just like, yo, when I
Yeah.
come to the house, I'm going to the grocery store, I'm picking up my own foods, I'm cooking healthy. And then sure enough, it's like little by little, people are paying attention more than you think they are. And I think that's the most powerful thing you can ever do is just that leading from the front. And you'll see changes. And alternatively, it's like with Charlie and I, that was something in our relationship we did navigate was he had tracked macros before, but it wasn't something, he was currently doing when we first started dating. But it was like when we moved in together and he was, it was like our grocery bill went from very tight and controlled and consistent to way different. And so we started having a lot of, conversations really quick on yo, A, this is how much money I used to spend on groceries. This is suddenly what we're spending. So we need to get our hands dirty on kind of navigating what we're doing because A, we can't afford this, right? But B, as things kept going on over time, and that's something I'm so grateful for, is that we're both just such great communicators on this is where I'm at, this is what I'm willing to do, or stuff like that. And so we truly, it's like we don't have to text each other to be like, hey, what should I pick up from the grocery? It's just like we
Yeah.
have our systems, we have our routine, and I wish we could get on board with we meal prep and stuff for the week, but again, cooking is canceled. That's dead to us. But yeah.
I think a lot of people are, they're fearful of, they have their friend groups or their partners and things like that. And, if they get involved with more health and fitness stuff, it's like, hey, you also can find other people too. Maybe not partners or spouses and stuff like that, but like friend groups and stuff like that. Like I know for me, when I started changing like how I was living and stuff like that, like yeah, I mean the people I used to go out with and hang out with, like I just went our own separate ways, and it's okay. I think it's better sometimes for both parties. I think if ultimately you're in a relationship or have friendships that just aren't, they aren't aligned anymore, it's okay to let people go. I think both parties would be happier that way.
So powerful to, especially like if we're talking a jujitsu gym or a CrossFit gym, having that community of people, because it's like when I talk to people, it's usually a 50-50 split. It's like, I personally desired somebody that had the same interests, the same hobbies, all the same things. It's like I wanted to find a dude version of me that we could just hang out and vibe together and do all the same shit together. Like I just wanted to ride or die for that. But you talk to also equal parts a lot of people and be like, bro, when I go to the gym, fuck that idea. I cannot lift with my spouse. I wouldn't want to lift with my spouse. That is my time. And so a lot of people, they actually do. They want people that are completely opposite of, hey, if I lift, they do jujitsu, and like we don't. That isn't a commonality. And I think that again, it's like being clear on what it is you want. But again, it's like you just have to figure out what support do you want and who do you want it from in what ways, because again, it's like I know you love jujitsu, but I've always just been like, bro, I don't want to get hurt. Like I'm sure that's fun. I know that because there's so much like learning to it, I know it just like torpedo into a dark hole of like all I would do is watch jujitsu videos and I would get obsessed with it. And so it's like no, we don't do that, right?
It's okay. When I come and visit, me and Charlie just basically, bromance each other.
But, it's like, even with you, did Brianna wasn't doing jujitsu before y'all met, right? Like she started that because you were.
Yeah. I asked her to come and try it out. And I mean, that's my thing too. It's like, if I'm with somebody and then I'm really into something, then I'm going to share it with them as much as possible. And of course, like if they're not into it, then that's fine. But they also got to be on board with me because I get super into stuff, right? Like, I mean, with jujitsu, like I'm there almost every day. You got to be okay with me doing that. And I think that's where it's like, again, we go back to the communication, like, hey, this is very important to me. I really highly value this. I will still do all the things that we want to do together, but this is my thing. So you got to be cool with that, like don't give me shit for wanting to do this stuff and getting mad or getting jealous that I'm spending all this time there. Like you know the business. I was upfront about this. So yeah, you can either join me or,
Imagine if you had kids though, because like that was the scenario that I would see a lot. Is it wasn't that the significant other or the partner would be like upset that the person was working out or doing whatever, but it would be because it would almost feel like it was at the expense of like, oh, well, you go to the gym for 2 hours, so then I'm stuck with the kids for 2 hours, and I'm the one that's inconvenienced because you're doing this thing. And so the kid thing is so freaking tough.
Things get infinitely more complicated for sure. Like, this is definitely like people listening, like Lori and I both, like we do not have children. But I mean, you had some notes in there about like sharing responsibilities, communication of what's fair, coming to some compromises. Like, hey, like maybe, hey, you watch the kids for this little period of time. I got you on this other period of time, so you can have your chill time. Like my sister, they just had a baby, and she wrote some of the stuff today because today was Father's Day, and Jarrell, her husband, is awesome, and he also will just take the reins and be like, hey, no, like I'll watch the baby, and then you go and take some time, and then she'll reciprocate, right? So I think again, it's like that kind of communication and finding compromise so that everybody can try to be, I mean, you may not have it perfect, but it can work.
Yeah, well, it's like you just have to have like a schedule that both both partners kind of agree to. So it's like, it's not just like, hey, out of the blue, I want to go work out. Fuck you, right? I was just thinking about, I think it was a Brene Brown video. She was talking about how her and her husband navigate things. And so I thought this was super interesting because I don't know how many kids they have, but I assume that there are, one or two kids at least. And so it was a video on Instagram. And so she was talking about when both of them get home from work each day, they have a communication system of, hey, right now I'm at a 20%. Like today was super stressful. And then reversely, maybe the other partner is like, hey, I'm at an 80%. Like I'm actually here. I can totally help. I can, pick up with the kids. I can make dinner. So I thought that was a really creative and really cool thing because at the end of the day, relationships are a team effort and it shouldn't just be expected to fall on one person. So communicating when you are, able to support, and then reversely when you're like, yo, I gotta go, like that's huge.
And that just reminds me of a really good point of like being flexible with things because, again, like it may be where, hey, like partner is at a 2 and you got to step up and maybe you had some original plans, but like be flexible, right? Like there's got to be some give and take. And I think just flexibility in all aspects too, even with like food, like if you're doing something super restrictive diet, like that makes shit really hard in relationships. Cause again, like what if the other person doesn't want to eat like that or whatever? It's like, hey, like, do we need to be doing something like hyper restrictive or can we be a little bit more flexible and make this easier for everybody,
It can be so easy to expect your significant other to like be your full support team. And it's like, I think again, it's like, that's why hiring a nutrition coach can be so immensely helpful because it's like, well, hey, then you can go to your partner for these things in life. And then separately, these changes that you're making or these things that you're struggling with, your partner doesn't have to deal with because it can.
Yeah.
Again, it's like, especially as somebody, that came from eating disorder background, it's like everybody's got their own shit. Don't get me wrong. It's like when you go to your friends to vent about something in life when really, if you went to a therapist, it would be better served because the therapist has the tools, they have the ability to listen, they want to listen. Whereas reversely, it's like, well, yeah, maybe your friends can be that support, from time to time, but it shouldn't be their job. So, it's, I think very similar with nutrition fitness. It's like, if we're trying to vastly make changes, hire a coach because then it's not putting that stress on your relationship. Or then you also have a third party to go to be like, hey, this is a roadblock I'm running into. The way we are trying to navigate this is not the sauce. Because again, it's so much stuff. It is just different when you're in the moment, you're not thinking versus, when you're actually able to, you know,
I've definitely had clients that I've worked with. I'm like, why do you want a nutrition coach? And they're like, well, I just honestly, I need somebody to talk to about this stuff. It's like, but I mean, that's facts though. Like you can't expect your partner to just want to talk about all that stuff all the time. Like go to a therapist for your problems, your issues, go to a nutritionist, health coach. If you want to talk about, navigating health and fitness, but don't expect your partner to be able to like help you with this because they don't have the tools most likely. So
a lot of bonding with other people just does come with food or with alcohol. And so, are there new hobbies or new things that you can brainstorm with those people of things that you can do where it's like, hey, so when you come to visit, we're going to go on a trail run and we're for sure going to go hiking and we're for sure going to go to the beach and XYZ, right? Again, just opening that door for communication of, hey, I know that we used to love going out to dinner. We can still keep doing that. Maybe can you pick the restaurants that you're going to so you have a little bit more control? I think, especially with like friends, that's huge. How do you form new ways of bonding and spending time with those people that aren't just revolving around food or alcohol or stuff like that? I think that's huge too.
what do you and CT like to do?
We love going hiking He loves surfing, and I also love surfing, but
Get that ass beat by those waves.
I need to improve my swimming before I can hang in the ocean like it is here. It's a little different when we're talking bullshit Texas surf park with like the perfectly curated waves. But it's like if I went out there, I would just get womps on like one full stop. So that is something he probably hasn't told you, but he's starting a new job where he'll actually be a swim instructor of sorts. So he will basically be helping train people that are like, hey, I'm a Green Beret, Navy SEALs. I'm, trying to do X, Y, and Z in the military. And so he will actually be helping train them on getting proficient in the water, being really good at swimming. He surfs, and that's something that he does a lot with his friends. We love going to get just coffee, right? We love going to the gym. We love working out. So it's like we do all those. I do want to try to go to jujitsu, but I would not give that to him. I would be like, yo, nope, Alex claimed this years and years ago. Like my first time I go jujitsu, I'm gonna go with Alex. We have a lot of the same hobbies, and then mutually we have a lot of separate hobbies. Obviously, the big one is also just we love trail running. We love running at the beach and stuff like that. So I'm in a phase right now where I'm like, I need to set some goals. Like I'm kind of just like so about a lot of like activity and fitness things right now. I'm just kind of like waffling. And so I want something to physically actually like work towards right now. So I don't know if I want to do another half marathon per se, but I might see if I can find like some fun, like shorter runs or 5Ks and stuff. I need something to train for right now. And with
Yeah.
him like being more busy with that job and stuff, I'll be like, oh, my fun buddy to do stuff with is a little more busy. What about you and Brianna?
Yeah, Brown and I like to go out to dinners. We went to a Korean barbecue place last night. You can get the meat like unseasoned or unmarinated. It's really cool. Like you just cook like on front of like a grill in front of you, and you can just cook like whatever meats and veggies and all that kind of stuff. So
What place was it? Because I feel like I've been to a place like that in Austin, but I couldn't tell you the name of it.
Gungam, like Gungam style, like that
Oh,
dog.
huh.
Yeah, yeah. It was like an all you can eat place. Like just basically like order whatever cuts of meat that you want, and then they bring it to you, and then you just put it on the grill, and then you eat. And yeah, so yeah, we like to do stuff like that. We do active stuff too. Like we used to go on a little bit more like hikes and stuff, like skateboarding. I taught her how to skateboard. She likes it better than I am. I'm not that good, but she's a lot better than I am. Go to the pool, go to Barton Springs. We travel together. So we like doing that stuff too. So if we're here just hanging out, a lot of time we are just hanging out. Like we play I'm trying to teach her how to play Diablo and video games, but you got to have your own things too. Like she does her own things. We work out at different gyms and stuff like that. She goes on walks with her friends. She gets what she needs, and then I get what I need, and we do stuff together, and then everything's good, So
I think you nailed it earlier because I did. I had a lot of, I don't even want to say like, I'm going to relationships with air quotes because it was those like, oh, we've been talking for 3 or 4 or 6 months, but you haven't officially been like, oh, okay, we're boyfriend and girlfriend, right? But you're spending time together. But the number of people where I would see red flags and it'd be like, ooh, this is really important to me, but it's not important to this person. Or like I said, I'm just personally not interested in dating somebody that's coming home late at night and
yeah,
being hungover and cramping the vibe. It's like, thankfully, Charlie and I are on the same exact page with that. And so many of these things we just literally never had to even navigate because we were just identical and kind of, it's like, we love the idea of drinking, but our bodies like physically just can't handle it. And I can't handle, Charlie can't handle the vibe cramp that is waking up the next day and just, feeling like garbage. And, we really are. We're just too busy trying to like live and love life. So it's just not us. But I think alcohol will be such a fun topic to get into for sure.
one last question before we end this is, what is one deal breaker for you other than like what we talked about, like health and fitness wise? Like what's like one deal breaker for you?
Oh man. Like I said, my issue is that the longer I talked about this on a podcast with Stu from WTF Gym Talk, actually. He asked so many good questions about like trying to, be a business owner and why were you single for so long? So it's like I feel like we hammered this so much, but it would be the people that would make negative comments in the gym or about like how much I love the gym, a lot of stuff with, like I said, just when you're in your 20s, most people do. They love going to the bars, they love drinking. So that was always kind of something where it's like, hey, like every once in a while, that's fine, but like this isn't where I'm trying to spend my time anymore. This isn't the thing I'm trying to do. I think a big one relationship I had in college was like, I would get so furious inside where it'd be like, fucking eating healthy, like I'm doing all this stuff, and this guy just ordered a pizza, like, and again, like who now, in retrospect, a decade plus later, it's like, oh, if the man wants to have pizza, he can have pizza. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
not my place to be mad or not my place to be offended. But it was really like indirect anger of I was mad because I wanted the pizza, but here I am, trying to make adult choices and be in alignment with how I want to look and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
How intimidating that would be to date a nutrition and fitness coach that's what they do for a living, and therefore meeting people and be like, oh, you look really fit, I bet you eat really healthy, and early on in dating situations trying to navigate, oh, where do you want to eat, Whataburger? No. That's no, even with you and me, right? It's like you used to give me so much freaking shit. You tolerated a lot of bullshit from me, as a friend, because I would. I'd just be like, bro, you really eating this in my house right now? Like, come on. I feel like there were a lot, and the bar was set really high, which again, that's not a bad thing. I had just gotten really clear on, okay, I've tried going out on dates or I've tried spending time with people that are completely different in how they want to eat and exercise. And that's not what I want. Like 10 years compounded over time, I had figured out, nope, I really just want to date somebody that's pretty much exactly like me, that, has very similar, habits around nutrition and fitness and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And thankfully, God bless it, the wait was worth it. And I did actually find that person. But I did, I went through a lot of years where I was really struggling just with being lonely and almost getting into relationships with people that I didn't need to be, or I was spending time with, again, relationships in air quotes with people that I knew they weren't the person I was going to be with long term, or I knew that it wasn't as good of a fit as maybe it could be. But if you have the alternative of being sad and lonely for years and years and years on end versus like, yeah, okay, like I would, sleep around with or go on dates or do stuff, spend time with people that I knew they weren't my long term people. But sometimes it's better than the alternative of feeling hopeless. Or also, it's like I went through a long phase where it was like, what's wrong with me? Like, why, all these people on Instagram are getting engaged, getting married, having kids, and I can't even like find somebody to date. What's wrong with me? And it wasn't what's wrong with me. It's like when I moved to California and I get off the airplane and everybody has the same exact hairstyle that I'm very into, and everybody's dressing the way that I'm into, and all the men look a kind of way, and I'm like, oh, I found my people. So it wasn't anything wrong with me. I just also like I
You just need
wasn't
to be
gonna
some,
find
yeah.
Texas wasn't it, then there's nothing wrong with Texas. But it's like, I love California dudes. And, those are all the things and hobbies and things that I'm into. So go figure that I would find, my
Yeah.
significant other here. But those 10 years gave me a lot of time to do the self work that I needed to be so that I could be awesome in this relationship. And like I said, it's like, if I hadn't had those 10 years, Charlie and I's relationship would probably look a lot different, may not have worked out. But we struggled for a hot minute there. What would be your deal breaker?
Probably like financial health. I don't think I could date someone who didn't have their shit together, like finance. I mean, again, like you don't have to have a net worth of like, 6-7 figures, but man, if you got like hella debt, or like you just got problems with finances, or you just have no concept of financial like literacy, I can't do with it, because I want to go and do stuff. I want to go do fun stuff. And yeah, I mean, I work hard and I try to save my money as best as possible and budget for stuff. And I want to be able to do stuff, you know? So, and if you're like, I can't do it because I've got this like mountain of debt. And then of course, like people have like debt, right? From schools and stuff like that. But if you're like handling it like responsibly, that's a little different than just like, like what's that Project Pat song? Like, should have paid your light bill, you bought an outfit. Like if you on that level, like I can't with you. Like I can't with you. So
yeah, no, that's it. I didn't even think about that, but you're 100% right. So many people, it's wild to me because like I said, like I am so grateful for my parents' present day that they paid for me to go through college. And that was an agreement they had with all the kids of like, yo, if you go get, your bachelor's, it's paid for. You're not going to have debt in that way. Like we want you to be set up for success. What happens after that? Like, you're on your own. But at the time in college, I didn't realize what a big deal that is. And also just, we talk about this all the time where it's like, how did our parents put us through college? Like,
yeah.
I know now I know what my tuition costs. I know what my parents were making. Like, how did they make this work? Right. But so many people do. So many people have student loans. So many people have massive, big, stuff with car loans and, especially if you bought a house and stuff and you've got a mortgage. So that's a big
You
deal.
can have those. I'm cool with people having those things and debts, but like you got to be handling it. Like you can't be sitting there like, I'm on the verge of bankruptcy. And like, I know bad stuff happens and people don't expect it, but like, to me, that's a deal breaker. So
Is there anything on the like nutrition and fitness end that would be a deal breaker?
I don't care if a person is like, trains all like does all the stuff that I do or whatever, but you can't be like, I just don't want the whole like, oh, we're gonna like drink wine and watch The Bachelorette and like snack on chips on the couch like all the time. There's a time and place for that. Like I definitely love like, Netflix and chilling, you know what I'm saying? But but like
actually watching Netflix or other activities.
but like we can't
Dear God, I hope your mom's not listening to this.
we can't be doing that all the time, man. Like I'm not here for it. So, I like to share things with people. So, with jujitsu or whatever, like I'll share it with you and you can join. But if you're not into anything healthy, then that's not going to work for sure.
Well, Alex, this episode was bomb. I love this.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for listening. Peace.
Peace.